Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 54, Jason Todd, especially requested by our patron Ariel. So thank you very much, Ariel, for this fantastic suggestion. Before we delve into what is a fascinating character study and definitely one of the more intriguing members of the Bat family, I know we're a little late based on when this was recorded. I apologize. We could not coordinate our schedules for a follow-up episode last week. But a couple of things. First off, how cool was it that we did She-Hulk and then 2 days after the episode drops, Disney and Marvel announce, oh, by the way, Disney Plus, new She-Hulk show. So Ruby, I don't know if you have some sort of telepathic abilities. Maybe we need to get you on the show. Maybe you're worthy of being a character on the show. But
No. You're thinking way too small. What we need is the lottery numbers.
Yes, that would also be fantastic. Or even if just some stock tips, maybe. It's not insider trading if it's foreseeing into the future. I'm not asking you for individual. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. The coolest thing, though, that was announced at D23 was the Moon Knight show. Oh, my God. I just need to digress for a second there. We were putting my son to sleep. And so my wife and I were in the nursery, and he's passed out, and of course it's dark, and we just have the little night light on thing so we can see, and we're both just sitting there on our phones as we're just browsing the internet and just waiting for him to officially fall asleep so we can put him down in the crib. And I believe it was Marvel Mythos. Brian, I believe, was the first one who posted it and tagged me, and I get a notification. Capes on the Couch on my Twitter, because I've just been, I don't know, farting around on the internet, whatever, and I get a notification on my phone, and I whisper yelled so loudly that my wife was very upset with me because she thought I was going to wake up our son, because that's how just over the moon, pun fully intended, jacked, excited, amped, psyched, pants pissingly ecstatic that I was that Moon Knight is getting a show.
Who?
I'm going to disregard that blatant attempt at trolling, much as several of my friends did on Facebook, and just say Kevin Feige and to Bob Iger and all of the Disney executives, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I am incredibly grateful that Moon Knight is being given an entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as the fact that we're going to get 6 to 8 hours of Moon Knight is more than I could have possibly dreamed. And
so it's anthonysitko@gmail.com for the scripts that they're going to use in the future?
Anthony.sitko at gmail.com if you want to email me for script ideas. I did an entire episode of the Into the Night podcast talking about my script for the movie. This would obviously be blown out further into a show. Frankly, if they don't hire Jeff Lemire as a story consultant, they're throwing away money, and they're doing themselves an incredible disservice. I think they need to bring on Jeff Lemire, they need to bring on Doug Mensch, and they need to bring on Bill Sienkiewicz for artwork, and Declan Shalvey. Just bring them on to consult. I don't know which version of the costume they're going to go with, whether it's going to be the classic silver / all white, or if it's going to be the Declan Shalvey, the black with the white accents, if they're going to go with the Mr. Knight, which is the suit with the mask.
That is the coolest one. I will give full credit that Moon Knight has always had excellent costumes, but that suit is truly stunning. I greatly appreciate it. I'm not saying that sarcastically at all.
I know you're not, and we in the fandom appreciate that, and we are very excited. The fan casting suggestions have already been thrown about, but I digress. If you want to know more about that, you can listen to Into the Night, the Moon Knight themed podcast. They are all about that. Side note, if you hear some occasional background noises or you hear something a little differently, we are now recording in the den in my house as opposed to my office, because my office is directly next to my son's bedroom. And with Doc and I tending to record in the evenings, it just makes it a lot less disruptive, because nobody wants to hear a 5-month-old wake up and cry. Otherwise, I will be killed and it will be at my wife's hand. And I don't want to die, at least not that way.
Well, at least we have it on recording so that it's known as premeditated murder and she'll get life in prison.
Absolutely. So next week's episode is Cletus Cassidy, a.k.a. Carnage. Because of the unfortunate gap, we were supposed to time the episode out that this week was supposed to be the Cletus Cassidy episode. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But in any case, Doc wrote a guest column on Cletus Cassidy for Adventures in Poor Taste. So you can go to adventuresinpoortaste.com and check that out. I know we'd previously done a couple columns for them beforehand. So Doc, thank you very much for that. So you can check them out and follow them on AIPT Comics and AIPT Science on Twitter. You can catch them out. It's a very, very cool site.
Yep, it's been a pleasure writing for them. I hope we can continue that arrangement.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely looking forward to it. And I'm sure based on the reception that they have gotten and the reception that we have gotten, that we're going to continue to partner on anything that is thematically linked like that. So anything that requires psychological analysis, you know where to find us. Last but not least, our shout out for this episode goes to Drop Anchor. The Cully family is 2 parents, 3 teenage daughters, 2 dogs, a cat, and a gecko, or 2 cats and a dog, I don't remember. But they live on a boat, much like the Lonely Island, except I don't know if they have their swim trunks and flippy floppies. But you can check them out at the Drop Anchor podcast. It is not a podcast themed around switching podcast providers, so they're not recommending that you drop Anchor and switch to, say, Libsyn. Only 3% of our audience is going to get that joke, but that's okay. I made it anyway because I'm into those types of esoteric jokes.
If you're not into esoteric jokes, how do you tolerate this podcast?
Yeah, I don't know. If you don't like stupid jokes and puns, you're in the wrong place. But I think we've digressed long enough. Let's get into Jason Todd, the second Robin. So Jason was created by Gerry Conway and Don Newton in Batman number 357. Of March of 1983. He was the second Robin after Dick Grayson, the original Robin, had left to become Nightwing. So the writers had felt that Batman needed the sidekick. He needed that sounding board again. So they say, hey, let's create Robin. Fantastic idea. Thing was, when they initially created Jason Todd, they basically Xeroxed Dick.
Yep.
So originally, Jason was the son of circus acrobats who were killed by a criminal, and he was adopted by Bruce Wayne.
Nice.
Which is exactly what happened to Dick Grayson originally. So this is the pre-Crisis on Infinite Earth. So this is 1983. This is pre-Crisis. Post-Crisis, they had the intelligence to say, let's tweak his background a little bit. So now he was revamped to be an orphan who was attempting to steal the tires off the Batmobile.
That is the most gangster thing you could think of. That I'll give a lot of credit to.
That takes some balls. Hey, you know what? The Batmobile's here. I think I'm going to gank those wheels.
So that's how the Joker got away.
Ba-dum-bum.
Yeah.
Wow.
But a couple of people are going to have to put that one together. I didn't just explain it. All right. Come on.
Okay. I give you that. So Batman takes him in as a protege to prevent him from becoming a criminal. So then you've got the most famous storyline involving Jason Todd, and I think the thing that most everybody identifies him with, a death in the family, the storyline. So Jason Todd is searching for his biological mother, but it turns out he finds her, but she's being blackmailed by the Joker to draw him out because the Joker wants to draw out Robin so he can get to Batman. So the Joker captures Jason, beats him with a crowbar, and then blows up the warehouse that Jason is in, and Jason dies.
Mom is in there too, by the way.
Yes, his mother is in the warehouse as well.
Because this whole thing was supposed to be, we had a deal, and Joker, surprisingly, quote unquote, says, well, I don't care. So you're all going to die.
Yep. So this death was voted on by fans. There was a 900 number that DC, in their infinite wisdom, said, you know what? We're going to let the fans decide. Does Jason live or does Jason die? And it was a very slim margin. It was very, very close vote. But in the end, the fans decided that Jason was going to die because Jason was not a very popular character amongst the fans at the time because they felt that he wasn't Dick. You know, right. He wasn't Dick Grayson, so they didn't mesh with him.
Yeah.
So
I think the most modern equivalent I could think of I'm going to use a wrestling reference here. If John Cena had actually turned heel at any point where 50% of the audience was booing him at the time, and they put up a fan poll or something, and they did something like this, I think that would be the equivalent.
I don't think that's entirely incorrect. So that's very fair. So years later, it was revealed that so he did die. This wasn't a case of, no, he didn't really die.
And the creators did point out this was intended to be a true death.
Yes. And he did stay dead for about 20 years, which is a fairly long time in comics. In fact, there was the thing that there was a long time saying that no one stays dead in comics except for Uncle Ben, Bucky, and Jason Todd.
Whoops.
Well, 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Uncle Ben's still dead, but Bucky and Jason Todd have come back. And I would say for the better. At the very least, their characters have gone through enough of a renovation that it works. But in any case, so it was revealed that when Superboy Prime altered reality by punching the barrier of the prison that he was contained in, comics, it altered reality and brought Jason back to life.
It's cooler than it sounds if you've actually seen it in the comic. That's my opinion.
The thing was that Jason came back to life, but he was in very poor health. He was suffering amnesia. He was in a coma for an extended period of time. So Jason was living, but he really wasn't up to snuff. Talia al Ghul, whom we've previously covered in an episode, takes him in because she recognized, I think he was fighting some vagrants on the street, and she recognized his fighting style. And she said, "You were trained by Batman," because apparently that's a thing that they can tell his fighting style was trained by Bruce Wayne.
That doesn't sound too far off, because most trainers in boxing, which is what I know, and MMA, do have certain styles they want their fighters to use. So yeah, you can usually tell who was trained by who. If you cross your arms in front of you, that's Archie Moore. Eddie Futch. If you have the classic shoulder roll, then that's the Mayweathers. You know, Mike Tyson was trained in the really old school peekaboo style. Like there's every variation you could think of when it comes to fighting. So that's not too far-fetched.
Okay. So, but in any case, Talia brings him in and uses the Lazarus Pit, which we've discussed in the Talia episode and the Ra's al Ghul episodes, that the Lazarus Pit restores your body, but does a bit of a number on your psyche and your mind. So he begins to plot his revenge against Batman and the Joker. He wants revenge against the Joker, obviously, for killing him, and he wants revenge against Batman for letting him die, and also for not killing the Joker, because he feels at this point Batman could have stopped the Joker at any point prior to this, but he continues to let him live, and I can't stand that anymore. So Jason becomes a Gotham crime lord known as the Red Hood. He beats the Joker within an inch of his life, but he spares him because he says, "I want to use you to kill Batman. So, but I'm still going to beat 7 shades out of you." So he confronts Batman and he wants to know why he never killed the Joker. And Bruce basically says, that's a line I cannot cross, even for the Joker. And I'm very sorry for what happened to you, but you've crossed that line. I cannot. So he gives Bruce an ultimatum. You either kill me or I kill the Joker, because he's standing there and he throws, he's got a gun to basically Joker's head. And he says, "You're going to have to kill me because I'm going to shoot the Joker." And Bruce, because he's Batman, uses a batarang and he disarms Jason, and the Joker escapes.
Yep.
To kill again. And so
I'm not going to get into that philosophical difference. Well, actually, that's a lie. I am going to get into that philosophical difference, but not in that way.
Yeah, I know. We'll get to that. So Jason ends up becoming an anti-hero who has no qualms about killing villains. And then he ends up in Arkham Asylum, which Batman visits him and he says, "This is for your safety as well as everybody else's." Except Jason goes buck wild. He ends up poisoning the food, and he kills dozens of inmates and injures about 100 more before escaping. Then in the New 52, Jason's origin is revamped, and it's revealed that the Joker was responsible for his parents' deaths, and now he heads up the Outlaws, which is a group of anti-heroes looking for redemption. It's actually a pretty cool story. I believe Scott Lobdell is the author. It's a pretty cool storyline, so check it out if you have access to the trades or Comixology or Amazon or whatever.
Have to give a warning because Bizarro is involved, and if you don't know anything about Bizarro other than his origin story,
Bizarro comes in the Rebirth version. So the original, the first Red Hood and the Outlaws, which is the New 52, is Roy Harper and Starfire is the group. And so they're all looking for redemption. Then in Rebirth, which is the next DC flip of their universe. Yeah. That's where he creates a new Outlaws group with Bizarro and Artemis, who's another Amazon. And this is the Dark Trinity because they're different versions of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman.
That one I've read. I'm just giving a warning. If you don't know anything about Bizarro other than his origin story, it can be difficult to read. I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to spoil it for everybody because it's still fairly new. But Bizarro is a bit much to take in if you're not used to the writing style or his quote unquote speaking style. Just saying. Yeah,
because he's the opposite of Superman. Everything is it's a slog to read. Well, I don't want to say a slog, but
no, you can say it. That's why I'm giving the warning.
Okay, that's fair.
But once you get through it, it's worth it, in my opinion. Okay.
So that's very well stated. So, issues for Jason Todd. Normally we do 3 issues. Here we're doing 4, but because there's so much to unpack with Jason, I mean, literally we could do probably another episode just on Jason. We could do, there's a lot of characters we could do a lot on, but Jason in particular has so much. And this is regardless of what version of the continuity. I mean, maybe aside from like pre-Crisis where he was basically just Dick Grayson 2.0, but every version of Jason Todd post-Crisis has a lot of things to talk about. So like I said, Doc and I, we tried to narrow it down to 3, but it just became a situation where, well, which one of these are we going to drop? And they're all very important and they all very much interlap. So it may not even come across as cleanly as just 4 because they're just going to sort of flow into one another. So first thing, revenge oriented against both Batman and the Joker. And it's very interesting that he is so opposed to 2 individuals who are diametrically opposed to each other, that he wants them both gone, both Batman and the Joker, for the way in which he died and for all of the things associated with that. But I just, from a storytelling standpoint, I find it fascinating and very intriguing that you have Batman versus the Joker, and we covered the Joker, I think, was that our 2nd episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think, by the way, we're due for a couple of redos on maybe some of those early characters. We can revisit them because the way we've done the show is so revamped since then.
Yeah.
But I digress. So the fact that he's so revenge oriented against these 2 individuals that are so opposed, that are so linked to his death and yet are so opposed to each other that he can't take a side, that he hates them both. Let's start there.
Yeah. This is something that you may not have ever expected me to say, but the Joker part is less interesting to me. I don't think I'll ever say that again.
I don't think you will either.
The reason I say it's less interesting is because it's the most relatable to anyone. You had someone beat you near to death with a crowbar and then...
No, beat you to death with a crowbar.
Well, the building exploding and all that, the way it was paneled, I mean, it didn't seem like he was absolutely dead, but then again, they basically show the Joker walking away and not caring. So one way or another, I can totally relate to someone wanting to get back at that person. Fine. Real simple. The Batman thing, a bit more complicated because in many ways, Batman saved him. Depending on which origin we're talking about, he either saved him from having no one around, or he outright saved him from what appeared to be a life of crime. And he gave him plenty of skills to demonstrate that on a regular basis, as well as the basic tenets of food, shelter, lots and lots of money, because he's secretly a millionaire or billionaire based on inflation. So he owes him, quote unquote. Unfortunately, the person that he considers to be his mentor and his protector is not there. From the outside looking in, we can say, is that really Batman's fault in that circumstance? After all, Jason was looking for his mom. That was his personal goal. Bruce had nothing to do with his mother. It's not as if he was saying automatically, yeah, you need to go find that woman and I'm going to have all the resources available to it. No, he took that upon himself. At that point, he's making his own decisions, his own choices. He's standing up on his own 2 feet. And it backfired badly, not because of anything that Jason did wrong, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, in a moment of trauma, in a moment of crisis, you want the people that you think care about you the most. You want them there, and you want them there now. You want them immediately. It really goes back to, and you know this now as a father directly, when your kid's crying, it hurts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Batman has come across as this lovey-dovey, super affectionate person, but still, it's been demonstrated on more than one occasion that he cares and he does want to protect people. And of course, he wants to protect the people he works with. So I think it's fair to say that he would have a similar response if he were around in the moment that all of this happened. The fact that he was late torments him for basically up until now. He still thinks about this.
Yes, he does keep the Robin costume in the Batcave. And even after it's revealed that Jason has returned, Alfred says, should we take this down?
Doesn't change a thing.
And that's exactly what Batman says, because in his mind, Robin, or the Jason that he knew, died in the explosion. This person is still physically Jason Todd, but he is an entirely new individual.
And that situation has changed Jason Todd, obviously. But what makes this fascinating is that he has to go against his own protector because his protector, in his own mind, failed him. He did not do the one thing. You had one job, and you didn't do it. So he doesn't care about the other parts of the Batman mythos and philosophy and all of that. That gets thrown out the window because he died. And self-preservation, no offense to anyone that has large goals and wants to be a martyr in life, but self-preservation is one of the tenets that seems to override any other philosophy in the moment. So I understand why Jason Todd would, quote unquote, want revenge.
I'm not saying he should have killed him, but I understand.
That's my basic point with that. Did it have to get to the point that he, even after discussing what happened, he continues to harbor that emotion? That's where the comics part comes in, because this isn't a matter of I nearly died or I may or may not have had a negative outcome. I died. There's nothing that is going to reverse that. He's grateful that a random event happened that gave him a second chance, but that wasn't Batman's doing per se, which is an interesting point that I think I'll get to in treatment because I have a unique idea with that. Okay, but that's a little teaser. I'll just
stay tuned.
Yeah. I'll just leave it at that. So the dichotomy and everything between Batman and their relationship with the Joker and all that other stuff, who cares? One guy tried to kill me, the other guy didn't save me. They both gonna pay.
All right, I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it. So, bringing all of that animosity that he has towards Batman because he didn't save him, there was a lot of animosity, or at least potential for animosity, that he carried prior to that because Jason feels that he was forced into the mantle of Robin by Batman. Jason is a blonde, or a strawberry blonde. Bruce forced him to dye his hair like Dick. He forced him to wear the same costume, forced him into the life of Robin, and he's constantly reminding Jason, you are not Dick. Dick Grayson is the golden child. And for a lot of folks that maybe who have parents that are narcissists or whatever, that have a preferred child, that the other child is the golden child, Dick is the golden child. Jason is in no way, shape, or form the golden child. And Bruce, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously, is rubbing that in Jason's face. And Jason does not forget that. And he knows it, and he harbors that resentment. So taking the death out of it, that there's still a lot of resentment towards Bruce for the way that he was treated, because and Jason has said to Batman, I didn't ask for this. You said, oh, you're trying to save me from a life of crime, that because his parents are screwed up, and we'll get to that in a moment. But again, Bruce foisted this upon Jason. This wasn't like Tim Drake, the third Robin, where Tim sought out to become Robin. Bruce was trying to replace Dick Grayson. In TV tropes, this is replacement goldfish.
Yeah. And that's a great description of it, because there's no such thing as perfect parenting, except for my co-host here. I'm sure he's the perfect.
Oh, please.
But everyone has a different style, and there is no way that you're going to be able to do the exact same things the exact same way if you have multiple children. Our biology doesn't allow for it, because our experiences and our hormones, to be honest with you, don't allow for it. As we get older, we're not going to have the same drive and motivation at age, I'll make it up, age 25 compared to age 35 compared to age 45. So by nature alone, there's going to be different responses.
And furthermore, you're not going to parent your first child the same way you parented the second child, because you've learned lessons. You saw how the first child ended up. So you may swing the pendulum in the complete opposite direction for child number two if you tried this and child number one ended up a certain way and you go, oh, Jesus, I don't want this, so I'm going to do things completely different. You also don't have, frankly, it's just the time and mental energy that you're not going to be able to parent child number two, because child number one is your sole focus, theoretically. Right. Again, theoretically,
no,
all things,
you're absolutely
being ideal, that your first child is your sole focus. Your second child, you can't ignore your first child to take care of your second. Well, you can, but that's a whole other host of things.
Right. And in this case, we have a situation where the development cycle had, quote unquote, completed. In other words, Dick Grayson became Nightwing. He went his own direction in a similar path to the parent. And for, I'll say many parents, not everyone, but for many parents, when your child, if you consider your path to be positive, your child takes a similar positive path, you're going to consider that a success. And therefore, to your point, you're going to say to yourself, this worked. Whatever it was, this worked. Let me make sure that I do this as close to the first time as possible. Except, who are we talking about? We're not exactly talking about someone that is known to be incredibly affectionate and, dare I say, perfectionist. He wants everything done a certain way, his way, at all times, and is incredibly demanding about it. And if he says that he wants to do things again that way, I would almost bet that he had a spreadsheet of the types of interventions that he did to make sure that Dick Grayson became the way he was. And he'll say it's an 85% success rate with Nightwing as opposed to the next Batman. So his point is, if I got 85%, no, I can't be too perfectionistic. Let's go for 90%. Can't do 100, but we can do 90, right? And so from jump, he gets on Jason and says, this is who you are, and this is what you're going to be, and I have the evidence to prove it. Which is
Look how awesome he was. You can be this awesome too. You're a screw up. I can save you.
Which, as we've already established, is putting an incredible judgment on someone that didn't want to be judged in the first place. Let's make this clear. Jason Todd didn't think he was a bad person. Jason Todd knew that he had screwed up circumstances. So I don't think he was regretful of the idea that someone would be able to intervene. But the idea that he had no opportunity to put his spin on it, man, oh man. Certain people in this room that might be speaking right now may have an issue if they never get that opportunity, because the idea of being an automaton is a fate worse than death.
Certain people in this room, period, regardless of who's speaking.
Well, that's why we're doing a podcast like this. The point being, someone like Jason could have ended up similar to Nightwing, but it might have been more beneficial to allow some of that leeway so that even if he didn't become Nightwing, any of the other paths he had taken could have been a net positive. They don't have to emulate everything the exact same way. But Bruce doesn't see life that way. He doesn't see things that way because when he's left things up to chance, he has had some unfortunate results. And yes, at some point, folks, we are probably going to do a Batman episode, okay? Don't hassle us about it. But you're right. It was a volatile mix from the start. It ended up exploding. It really ended up exploding. And I'm not sure it could have been better, but I think there was a greater opportunity for it to be better if Bruce had just simply once in a while said, how do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, he never gave Jason an opportunity to have any input on his future, his life, because Bruce said, and that's the thing. And I mean, we can get into this, I'm sure, if we do, if and when we do the Bruce episode. But why did Bruce feel the need to foist this life upon Jason? Because to me, it comes from a place as though Bruce is saying, I screwed up or I failed with Nightwing. And I could understand if Nightwing went rogue or went off and that he was the failed pupil and I'm gonna fix the mistakes that I made. Dick Grayson is a hero. Dick Grayson, and he's got a couple of issues, but Dick Grayson is a great guy.
So to bring it back to what I had said earlier, and we'll be honest with ourselves here. I know in my family, if I came home with an 85% as my final grade in something, there would be some questions, including of myself. Did I study enough? Did I put enough effort in? I think I could have done better. I could have gotten a 95. I could have gotten 100. And so having that expectation, it might as well have been a failure. So you're right. He put that pressure on him and didn't have, in theory, that type of check and balance to say, as with perhaps a spouse, a partner, Alfred, to give that input and say, you did a good job. Who knows what's going to happen with the next child? Because that's a scary premise that most parents don't want to accept, but it's the truth. Who knows what's going to happen with the child? It's not a guarantee that you do everything right and the result is going to be what you want. So he could have done everything perfectly, even with Dick, and Dick becomes a huge villain. That doesn't mean that he failed as a parent. But with Jason Todd, he saw that there was too many warning signs and wanted to rein it in so tightly that he forgot about the whole personal development.
Yeah. And that was something that became apparent, especially in Rebirth, that Batman took in a young Jason and said, this kid's really violent. He's got a lot of problems. So he did everything. He tried to force Jason into the straight and narrow path. And that's not who Jason was. That's not who Jason is. So again, tying into this, and I know I say there's just a lot of stuff. So he had a troubled youth. His dad was in and out of prison. His mom was a junkie. So right off the bat, Jason came from what would be considered, and I don't like to use this term because I find it pejorative, but it's a term that people understand, a broken home. I don't like to use it because I don't want to consider that people are broken or your situation is broken, but it wasn't an ideal circumstance to raise a child. I think that's fair to say. So Jason, depending on the run, is potential bipolar disorder, and certainly he has depression. There have been discussions of idealized or suicide idealization throughout this. These are all things that occurred before and after the resurrection, largely after the resurrection. And we'll get into the impact that the Lazarus pits had on him again momentarily. But there's a lot to unpack there as well because of the upbringing even before Batman. So Batman took in this kid, as you said, that was troubled, headed toward a life of crime, had all these red flags, etc. Even without Batman's interference, where would you have seen Jason's life going, or what would Jason have have come to, how would he have ended up because of everything that had happened, whether or not based on the version of the continuity, whether or not the Joker was involved, there was still a lot of things going on with Jason's family life.
Right. Well, I know I've mentioned this on previous podcasts, but the biggest predictor we have of future behavior is past behavior. You're not a slave to it, but you certainly have to own it. So from that standpoint, he had the opportunity to, unfortunately, experience the things that his parents did. So whether it's positive or negative, and whether or not a child has the wherewithal, the conscience, the intelligence to recognize good and bad at certain ages, it becomes normalized. So you can think that, I'm going to give an example here that isn't even directly related to comics or anything. You can think that dad hitting mom is wrong, but subconsciously it also becomes a situation where that's just what you do. And so even if it's a wrong thing, you now are fighting your own sense of what you think a normal day-to-day life is. So it's not fair to say to someone like Jason Todd, hey, I know you had a broken home, kid, but you need to suck it up. That's, aside from being demeaning, that says to the person, hey, I know that you are not as human as the rest of us. It's dehumanizing. And any person that experiences something that they consider to be dehumanizing is going to have a couple of responses. First of all, they're going to discredit whatever that person that they're talking to says. So it doesn't matter what type of positive advice or opportunities that are being offered to the person, they're going to shut it out. The other thing, of course, is the backlash. The idea that if you think I am a bad person without even understanding my situation, then I have every reason to think the same thing of you. Why would I give you the respect of common courtesy if you're not giving it to me from the start? So it's not just the background of whether or not people have had negative experiences with their parents or violence or drugs or all of that. It's all very important. I'm not downplaying it. I'm just saying, recognizing that that is that person's natural experience, unfortunate as it may be, allows you to do something different than what everyone else from the outside does. What am I talking about? Because I know I'm getting very philosophical and very vague here. If you go on an evangelical mission to save every latchkey kid because they're the screw-ups, they're going to either laugh you out of the building or they're going to beat you up because you're not giving them the level of credence that their life is important and everything that's happened up to that point has meaning. You're saying all of that doesn't matter. You just need to do the right thing, and I'm going to help you do that. Wrong way to come from. Okay, that's just something that I've observed with patients in significant crisis situations. And quite frankly, it's something that I think from a societal standpoint has almost become ingrained from, oh boy, I'll admit this is getting a little touchy here, but there is something about people that are in a beneficial and or privileged situation that feel at times that they're doing charity. You're not doing charity. You're making yourself feel better. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. And someone like Jason Todd spots that a mile away and shuts it out. So even if you're trying to quote unquote help them, if you are not demonstrating the proper level of empathy and sympathy, then you're right. He's going to go on this negative path. He's going to have the life of a criminal and all of that. And that's all anybody will ever think about until, as much as we bashed Bruce for how he may have handled a lot of the details, the fact that he put himself in the circumstance with someone trying to steal the wheel off of his car, the tire off his car, and say, I think you deserve an opportunity. Because if you got the skills to do that, you got the skills to do a lot of other things. That's recognizing that the person is doing something that is still within human nature, that there are circumstances that he may not understand, but he acknowledges existed, and he's willing to work with that from that point forward, as opposed to ignoring all of it.
Well said. So, and the last thing that happens, and we've discussed this with the Talia episode and the Ra's al Ghul episode, the Lazarus pit, as we said, may restore your body, but it really does damage to your mental abilities and your mental processes. And Jason is no exception to this. So when he comes out of the Lazarus pit, he's already got all of this resentment and anger and all of these things that are bubbling up inside of him. Even if he can't remember it, he's still harboring all of these negative feelings. He's got bad juju, so to speak. And now you've exacerbated that insanity with the Lazarus pits. That is a dangerous combination.
The best way that I can give a description of this on the realistic side of things is a patient that is known to have significant emotional stressors, may have a formal diagnosis of depression or bipolar disorder. By the way, I know it's a sidetrack. If you're concerned that I never actually went through the formal diagnoses, there are previous episodes where I've done that kind of ad nauseum. So that's the only thing. I didn't want to just rehash that again and again and again. So I'm not ignoring it. I'm just simply trying to create new content because this is an entertainment podcast after all. To get back to what I was saying, a person with that situation, that condition, those circumstances, on top of that, developing a severe medical illness, which is something that often gets pushed to the wayside. There is this stigma associated with mental health for some stupid reason, and I don't use the word stupid often. There is a stigma that people that happen to have a mental illness somehow are only dealing with one thing at a time. In other words, if they have an ongoing depression or a manic phase of bipolar disorder or something like that, then there is no other medical problem that may be going on. And unfortunately, I'm going to call out some of my colleagues that tend to hand wave evaluations from a medical standpoint because they focus so much on mental health. Well, last time I checked, you don't separate your brain from the rest of your body. So you end up with someone like Jason Todd, who's already had what we know is a serious condition, death. Okay. He was somehow saved from that. Well, I mean, that's no different than someone who's coded on the table and through CPR and the AED shocking their chest, they come back to life. Or they've had an overdose of heroin and they've gotten the spray of Narcan and now they're pissed off at you because they're in full withdrawal, because that's what Narcan does. Either way, the point stands, you are in a situation that you did not expect to be in. You are now critically, physically ill, in addition to whatever other emotional or potentially psychotic situation you have going on with your mindset. You combine those two things and you're not going to end up with a person that's going to be very malleable. And by that, I mean, you can't just talk them off the ledge. You can't just give them general reassurance. You actually have to do some serious interventions for the sake of their safety and the safety of others, depending on exactly what's going on. So for someone like Jason Todd with what is clearly at that point a traumatic background, along with limited sources of affection and understanding of his circumstance, you can't just walk up to everybody and say, hey, I died. How do you deal with that? Although Bruce did. He did talk to, he talked to Green Arrow. He talked to Superman about, hey, you guys died and came back. How would I deal with that with this guy, Jason? Because he says that happened and I don't believe him, So anyway, I know it's a little bit of a digression, but the point is he doesn't have any of what you would need to be the basic supports so that that circumstance could go as smoothly as possible. Instead, he has an assassin. Yeah, that's going to be really lovey-dovey, right?
Yeah. No problem there.
Right. So, yeah. My point is with those types of situations, even if someone's presenting with severe symptoms of what appear to be a mental illness, don't ignore the medical side of things, because if you miss that, you don't get a second chance. Period.
Very well said. I can't even, I find no flaws with that whatsoever. Like I said, there's so much to unpack with Jason. I mean, we could keep going.
Well, I know. I'm trying to pick bits and pieces that'll allow this to be a somewhat coherent episode that ends in a decent amount of time.
Yeah, exactly my point. So let's take a break for some ads, and we'll come back and we'll discuss treatment.
Do you love true crime, history, and mysterious happenings? Every week on The Cult of Domesticity, a guest and I discuss a different historical happening, a true crime story, or whatever strikes our fancy. Join me, Courtney, every Thursday to hear some fascinating tales from some fascinating people, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Do you love movies and psychology?
Do you want to know what it would be like if Batman was in your therapy office?
Listen to our podcast, Popcorn Psychology. 3 therapists dissect blockbuster movies, available everywhere you find podcasts.
Hi, I'm Erica Schultz, and this is Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling.
And we're back. So, starting as we always do with in-universe treatment. You said earlier that you had an interesting idea for treatment. I'm very curious to hear what it is.
So when Jason gets resurrected, he was kind of wandering, and he wandered so far from the grave, he wasn't really identified in any way. Like they said, he didn't have registered fingerprints. Like nobody really knew who he was, and he clearly didn't exactly know.
Well, he wasn't a missing person because he was dead.
Right. So there was no other intervention to be done. When Talia gets involved and Lazarus, blah, 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 blah. To make this whole ruse, once he comes to his senses, make more sense, he actually has a coffin made. Because he broke out of the other one. Because you have to get out somehow, right? So he has a replica made so that none would be the wiser. Because he knew at some point when he was going to get all this animosity with Batman and this revenge plan and get it all going, he knew someone was going to come there and he'd have to make sure everything was A-okay. The thing is, the grave was empty. He even got Clayface involved. It was really big manipulation on his part. My point is, and this is scary, this is not a real treatment, please, once again, entertainment purposes, but Jason is so focused on doing all these external things, he doesn't stay in his own headspace. I want to give him that opportunity. I want to give him some sensory deprivation. I want him to go back in that coffin.
Damn.
This was your natural condition based on the results of everything that had happened in your life. This is where you should be. Random chance has it that you're not. It doesn't have to be for a long time, but for however long as he could tolerate it. Get to know your dead self. Find out what it is that you consider to be more valuable than this revenge thing or whatever, because it's really just emotionally messing with him way too much. He'll never find peace. He'll never find any satisfaction, even when he says he wants the Joker dead. He wants revenge on Batman. He wants to save Gotham from all these villains and make sure he kills them because Batman won't. All of that stuff rings hollow because he's never dealt with any of the actual emotion behind why he's doing what he's doing. And as much as I'd like to have the ego to say that the words that I use are going to have an effect, they very well might. I think that that would be way more powerful and give him a bit more respect for why he's actually in a situation where he should have a lot more gratitude than he does. I don't think a gratitude journal cuts it unless he wants to take it with him to the grave.
Literally.
Yep.
Wow. Wow. Huh. I force him to cope with all of those feelings. Whew.
There would be a debriefing afterwards. He'd talk with me, but just do it.
Wow. I was going to make a joke, but that's such an interesting concept. I'm not even going to joke about it. Okay. All right. I dig it. That was not a joke. I swear to God, that was not intended. That pun was not intended. I swear to God, that just came out. Because I do say that. I dig it. I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. So out of universe?
No, I'm not doing sensory deprivation. No, I'm not putting him in a coffin. No, I'm not doing any of that stuff. Okay, let's get that out. Let's just get that out there right now. All right, because I'm sure there are some people, honestly, in listening to this, are just like, okay, Doc's lost it. Click. That's not the intention, people.
Well, for the out of universe, I would say you've got an individual who, let's just say, suffered an NDE, near-death experience. Was in a coma for an extended period of time, which Jason was. So let's just extract the death and resurrection part of it, who was resentful of his mentor, suffered a horrific accident or whatever, and was in a coma, came out, and now harbors all these feelings of resentment and revenge towards the mentor and anybody else who put him in that situation, and is potentially trying to make a better life for himself and others. Questionable. How do you start with the treatment of that person?
The first session is going to be a lot of listening on my part. I want that person to just simply describe to me, you mentioned NDE. Just tell me what that means. Because this is a situation where I can't demonstrate empathy. I cannot put myself in that person's shoes.
Well, here's a question, but before you even continue, do you think that person would even be able to open up to you? You're saying there's a lot of listening. How much speaking do you think is going to happen?
That's a fair question. And everyone is different. So there's a spectrum there. And it's a great point because someone like Jason Todd, from all the information we've gathered, more than likely would not be looking to speak under those circumstances. Believe it or not, I do come across this fairly often in a hospital setting because I'll introduce myself as Dr. Issues. The second that I say I'm a psychiatrist, oh, I don't need you. And from that point, I have a choice to make. If I think that statement is meant as a threat, then no, I don't put myself in harm's way. I point out, okay, thank you for your time. Sorry about the circumstances. I can always come back later. I don't say I'll never come back, or I don't say, okay, we're done, or anything like that, because I don't want to close that door. But I want to make sure that they know that for the time being, they have an opportunity to reflect and think about it, because I will, and it gives the anticipation, well, I am going to come back. So in other words, it is going to be addressed at some point. If it's not a threat and it's simply a reaction, maybe because of mental health stigma as a whole, then I still give a pause, but I then try and make sure I create some level of diversion. That's the honest answer. All right, I can understand that. You know, I'm just random psychiatrist. I happen to notice that you have this, let's say, bed of roses here. Like, that's a pretty big gift, you know? How long has that been there? And they may or may not answer. And I just make other observations about the things around them, because hopefully this person has other people that they've had interactions with. If you mention the fact that they may have had someone that they had a falling out with before this, or a mentor that they really do have a vendetta against, or whatever the case may be. I may not know all of this information, but just even acknowledging that there are things around them that are giving me hints to their life, when in theory, often in those circumstances, no one else has given that attention to those details. That alone can open the opportunity to talk. So I really start to focus on that. Man, you know, it's interesting because that tattoo looks pretty faded. I mean, there must have been a reason you got that, right? Forget all the mental health stuff. Like, what's up with that? All of a sudden, I took something that is incredibly intimate to most people and zeroed in on it at the expense of everything else, at the expense of any medical problem, at the expense of any quote unquote mental health diagnosis, all of it. Just to say, that's a little piece of you that you're willing to show the world. How do you respond to that? Anything that I can do to relate it to something that is not directly involved in psychiatry, that's how I approach it. Whatever I can do to get my foot in the door. Because once I have the foot in the door, I can just allow the person to talk about whatever topic they want. It's going to take usually more than one session to do that, if that's the circumstance. But you'd be surprised. You'd be very surprised. Some people are starving for some level of personal contact. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I have noticed from a personality standpoint, for whatever reason, many times, even patients that are very frustrated and say they don't want to talk to me, even without me giving all of these very direct cues, will still open up to me. And it's fascinating because I don't know what it is about me that I'm doing that allows for that so naturally. But it's a consistent observation by multiple people out besides myself. So I'll use that to my advantage. And I don't mind that one bit. But that's how I start any of those sessions with someone that has had a lapse in time with regards to life experience. And if it's been near death, if it's been traumatic, if it's involved other people that may have been involved in that trauma and still may be involved in their lives. It's unfortunate when you do have situations where children are, oh, this is heavy. Children are in a serious medical condition, recover, and you find out exactly who's responsible, and it's a family member.
Oof.
So under those circumstances, now, if that family member, quote unquote, is responsible for that child's safety, thankfully we have outside interventions. We have, I'll just say Child Protective Services so that people understand that, because the name in New Jersey is just weird. But outside of those interventions specifically, making sure that a person that hasn't had a voice for a long time gets to finally speak unfiltered for at least a brief period of time can be the most therapeutic thing you can do.
And I imagine from your standpoint, getting a patient like that to open up is just incredibly rewarding from your standpoint, to know that you were able to unlock this person that had shut themselves off, to give them that glimpse that someone cares, however brief it may be, however fleeting the connection may be, to know that someone cares, to give them that hope that there can be something better, that not every adult, not every person is out here to harm you, that there are people out there willing to care and willing, and who do have your best interests at heart, that's incredibly powerful. And that's something that, at least in my line of work, I don't get the opportunity to do that much. And I know that there's a lot of difficulty with all the stuff that you have to deal with in your job. But moments like that, I think, are incredibly rewarding.
I mean, I know, I appreciate that. Thank you. But I'm going to challenge you a little bit, because you said in your line of work, you don't get that. Are you sure about that? And I'm not just challenging you, I'm challenging listeners as well, because some of you may be thinking, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor or healthcare person, so I don't see that in life. Are you sure? Because the interactions that you have with people that may seem totally innocuous, in general, we don't know. We have no idea what anybody's going through at any one given time unless they say something. And we all know that there are people out there that are, in general, either quiet or simply have something that they don't want to share. And that's okay. I'm not saying that you force them to share things, but the fact that you can have an interaction with somebody just as simple as a hello, just as simple as asking how their day was and meaning it. I know that second part's important.
Yeah.
So how was your day? Oh, yeah, great. All right, fine.
Yeah. How you doing? Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm good.
Right. That's the thing that everybody does, and that means nothing. Actually taking the time, how are you doing? And you give that look, and I can't explain it, and unfortunately it's a podcast, so you can't even tell, but like the look that you give someone. We're not
live streaming this episode.
Yeah,
I apologize.
the look that you're giving someone where you're actually making eye contact, say, how are you doing? And then you literally keep your darn mouth shut, where people recognize, oh, you're actually asking me. Oh, yeah, I mean, like, I'm okay. The day was a little rough. Like, damn, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I hope it gets better for you. Have the best day you can. That's it. That's it. You don't know what you just did. You don't know that you just made that person's day. I'm just giving that as an example. So don't, it doesn't all have to be professionals, and it doesn't all have to be this super complicated stuff. Those little interventions can really make a difference when you aggregate them over the course of a person's lifetime.
Okay. I mean, I just was speaking in generalities.
I know, and I just wanted to give an opportunity to say that everyone can make a difference. That's all.
Well, I mean, that's why we're doing this show, right?
Yeah.
That's why this is not just us because we like the sound of our own voices. Because frankly,
I don't.
I was going to say I'm not particularly enamored with mine, but I digress. So, all right. So then that's our challenge to our listeners is make a connection with someone, just eye to eye, a little, hello, how are you? Acknowledge the other person. There are millions of people out there who just want acknowledgement. How many folks that are on their way to, and this is sad to say, but I've watched documentaries or I've read stories about people who were on their way to jump off of a bridge or on their way to commit suicide, and they survived the attempt, but they said, had one person acknowledged me on the way there, I wouldn't have done it. Had one person authentically said, hello, how are you? How's your day? Anything along those lines. Had any one person authentically done that, they wouldn't have made the attempt. So we challenge you, the listener, authentically connect with someone every day. Try. Or, or maybe you're that person that is looking for that acknowledgement, in which case we see you, we hear you, and Doc and I truly hope that you have the best day that you can. So.
Well said. Well said.
So, sometimes we get heavy on this show, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're like the stock market. We're really volatile with this. Like we'll have like the high and light jokes, and then out of nowhere, boom,
But that's okay. That's why the folks come back every week. Well, we hope you come back every week. So let's take all of this and let's wrap it up in a bow, and let's see what happens when we get Jason Todd on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Jason. I'm Dr. Issues.
Doc,
how are you doing today?
Do you really want to know?
Yes, honestly, I do.
Bullshit.
You can think that, but my time's your time. If you want to spend it in silence, I'm willing to do that too.
So we're just going to waste an hour sitting here? There are literally hundreds of things I'd rather be doing than this.
Such as?
Cleaning up Gotham, first and foremost.
Yeah, that does seem to be a huge motivation for you, and clearly it's important for the rest of the city. So help me get a better understanding. When did all of this start?
Are you really asking me to tell you about my parents?
Okay, it's rather ham-fisted on my part, I know, but it's really important.
My parents are garbage, okay? Dad was in and out of jail. Mom was a junkie. They were a bad influence. That's why I turned to crime, yada, yada, yada. How very Freudian of you. You spent all that time in med school for that?
An excellent synopsis, and obviously you've identified that moving past childhood trauma.
No, now you're just an amateur. I mean, who moves past anything?
Poor choice of words. Look, honestly, I didn't expect this level of immediate sensitivity from someone who didn't want to talk in the first place.
And the only thing I hate more than small talk is silence. So let's at least fill the void, even if it's just to kill time.
Interesting you say that. Silence allows for the human mind to develop new ideas, to allow for introspection. So that tells me it must be painful for you.
Look, I don't have time to think about stuff. I just have time to act and get things done. I was trained to act on instinct. If I slow down to think, I'm dead. Again.
Well, you learned that lesson well, and I don't think I have to ask who you learned it from.
Well, it's obvious I didn't learn it from my parents.
So let's talk about Batman then.
Batman.
I can't let that be the end of it.
Why not?
Okay, let's do this the schoolboy way. Batman because
he let me die, because he could have saved me, because he's had countless chances to kill the Joker, but instead he lets him live, so Joker can kill again and again and again and again. If he did what he was supposed to the first time, or the second time, or even the 100th time, I wouldn't have to die, nor would thousands of other people. But no, he has this goddamn rule against killing, so everyone else dies, just so he can feel holier than thou that, he doesn't kill. Batman doesn't directly kill anyone, but he's got more blood on his hands than anyone. That's why, Batman.
Ooh. And yet, here you are, talking to me, ready to save countless lives, sacrifice your body. Heck, you sacrifice your own psyche at any price, just willing to kill anyone that doesn't see things the way society thinks it should be. Look, my point is difference of philosophy, similar results, more first-hand blood instead of second-hand. So please keep in mind, I'm not trying to say that you or Batman are more correct.
Look, that's incredibly oversimplified, okay? Nowhere near as clear-cut as you make it out to be. All right, I'm not willing to kill just anyone, but there are people out there who will never be redeemed, never have a positive impact on society, never do good. And for the sake of my redemption, someone has to eliminate them. I know I can never undo what I've done, but if I can spare someone else from having to go through my hell, then it's worth it.
Man, you speak with such passion. You're still going through your own hell right now, aren't you?
Every day.
I'm impressed with your overall hope for Gotham, but do you actually have hope for yourself? Are you sure you don't have hope for those you say will never change?
The difference is I was a kid when I did most of my stupid shit. Yeah, Batman forced me into this life, and I'm grateful for the skills that he taught me, but I didn't ask to become a hero. That's the difference. The people I get rid of, they've had chances to do something good repeatedly, and they choose wrong. They choose evil every time, and they will continue to do so. So for the greater good, whatever that may be, I take them out so they can't create someone like me in the future.
Someone like you? You mean a person willing to be a gun runner, a drug smuggler, just to get the good graces of criminal syndicates, and then you take them down by taking them over? You know what? You're right. You're right. Everything you've described is way more complicated than I've described so far. But my job is to distill complicated matters to their psychological essence. You're tortured, Jason. Much of it was out of your control. Let's take some of that control back together.
I have taken control. That's why I do what I do. I wasn't innocent when all that happened to me, but I can keep those things from happening to someone who is innocent. I'm in control. I'm always in control.
Your emotions, your dreams, or nightmares, they all say otherwise. Your friends, okay, not friends, your colleagues, they say otherwise. If you really wanted to accomplish all the things you claim are important, wouldn't it be easier if you had help? Wouldn't it be better for your goals if more people joined you?
What, you mean like the other Robins? You mean anyone else who Bruce sucks into his world? The other fools who've been duped into wearing an R or a bat symbol on their chest? There's about a dozen of us at this point. Isn't that enough? You want to talk dysfunctional family? We're way more up than my parents ever were.
And we've come full circle.
God damn it.
So much for moving past that, like you said, huh? Look, families recreate themselves unless there's an intervention. So you don't have to have your own kids, and I know you'll never get the white picket fence, but you'll always have those others in your life, whether you want them there or not.
I don't mind some of them.
Okay, then start there. I can think of a couple that actually seem more similar than you realize.
Don't say Damien, don't say Tim, and don't you dare say Dick.
I guess I don't have to. All right, do what you will, but somehow I don't see this chaos ending with a "Who cleaned up Gotham" score sheet.
You think we don't keep tabs?
Somehow I think the goal of that is purely for informational purposes. But did you ever think of doing it for, I don't know, reconciliation, healing, without your schemes involving killing more villains?
The problem is these goons are like the Hydra. You kill one, two more pop up to replace them.
Well, that's Red, but I didn't think it was Red Hood. Plus, something aside from this, I doubt any of them ever say thanks when you're cleaning up the streets. And I don't think I've ever asked this of any vigilante before, but do you folks actually say that to one another?
What? No, why would you ask that? That's asinine.
Is it? I mean, it's just a simple reciprocation of positive value. I mean, that's a basic tenet, so that people continue their motivation. Otherwise, things get this, dark and brooding thing that you guys got going.
Look, I'll say thanks if someone helps me on a case or someone saves my ass, but it's not really in the nature of the job.
So you learned that lesson well, too, huh? Look, okay. It's clear that I browbeat you enough. I mean, I guess my main suggestion at this point is turn off your autopilot once in a while.
I'll think about it, but not when I'm on patrol.
Sounds like a start.
Well, I don't think you fully got through to him, but I think, as you said earlier, you got your foot in the door.
Yep. Sometimes that's all you can do in the moment, and hopefully something takes root.
Better your foot in the door than their foot in your ass, right?
Well said.
Came up with that one off the top of my head. So that's going to wrap it up. So thank you very much, Ariel, for this fantastic suggestion for Jason Todd. If you want to become a patron like Ariel, you can go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/capes on the couch. You can subscribe at the $1, $3, and $5 levels. All of our $10 present levels are presently filled. But we appreciate all the support that our presidents have given us and continue to give us. So coming up, we've got our next few episodes lined up. Cletus Cassidy, which again, we should have been this week to tie in with Doc's column on Adventures in Poor Taste, also to tie in with the Absolute Carnage arc that is happening right now in Marvel Comics. Then the following week, Brian has sort of thrown it open to us and said, you guys pick the one that you want. So to tie in with the Future Foundation, which is currently being written by friend of the show, Jeremy Whitley, we are going to cover Ultimate Reed Richards, a.k.a. The Maker. So basically Reed Richards if he were a villain. Yep. And then president level patron Matt has requested an episode on Survivor's Guilt because Matt loves his theme episodes. So we're gonna do one on the theme of Survivor's Guilt in comics. And there's a lot to unpack there as well. A lot of instances. I know he referenced Emma Frost. I'm sure we can find a lot more to come. Maybe I don't know exactly when we're going to be recording, but probably at least the Survivor's Guilt episode, if not the Maker episode, will be recorded. We are going to be doing our first ever live on-site recording. Unfortunately, we were rejected for a panel at New York Comic Con. Damn you! But so I will be at New York Comic Con and I will be interviewing creators. So we're going to be compiling some of those interviews. Doc and I are coming up with who we want to talk to, what questions we want to ask them. And then once we get everything together, we will figure out how to get that out to you, the listeners. But our first ever live recording is tentatively scheduled right now for the evening of September 18th. That'll probably be around, say, between 6:30, probably closer to 7 o'clock at Rogue Comics in Cranford, New Jersey. So you can come out and meet Doc and I, and we will be recording live. So we will be doing possibly the Survivor's Guilt. Maybe we'll get another one in if we talk to the patrons and we get some ideas. We will figure out how that's going to go, and we will be taking some live questions during the recording session. So that should be a lot of fun, and we may even do some giveaways since we'll be live. So you can check all of that out. We will be posting that on our Twitter pages, our Instagram and Facebook, all of which are at Capes on the Couch. You can email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com. Please like, rate, and subscribe if you haven't already left us a positive rating and review, particularly on Apple Podcasts. We definitely appreciate that because that helps us grow in the rankings. And we are basically found on all of the very popular podcast catchers. And our website, as always, is capesonthecouch.live. You can find out all the information, and we're constantly posting stuff there. Doc, anything you want to say before we leave?
Hope is what a man has before he has all the facts. Grace is what allows that hope to return. I hope Jason Todd finds that at some point.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I know that I've heard the first part before, and the second part, honestly, is my addition.
Okay. Well, I think that needs to be inscribed somewhere. So maybe we'll post that on the website. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.